All right, good morning, guys, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Cedric, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And it is summer's waning, and I'm counting down the days with great trepidation that we have to put the boat away. And it's actually been a little earlier than normal because all my kids are fleeing. So, but yeah, my daughter went down to UVU and my other son's working all the time. The daughter, she's going off doing modeling stuff now. And so it's just me and the wife. And I'm like, all right, who wants to go out on the boat with me? So I got to find a boat buddy, but that's all good. So, well, guys, I'm super excited. As you guys know, every week I'm sponsored by Rethink Rich and the Speakfire crew. And this week, I'm really excited because I have a gentleman that I met on TikTok. I tell you, TikTok has been an amazing opportunity for me to meet and very creative, outgoing, fun people. And the guy that I'm bringing to you today is exactly that. His name is Dave Conrey, and he hosts a TikTok show that's called Dave Makes Things, and he makes really cool things. So welcome, Dave. How are you today?
I'm good. A little bit hot, but good.
A little bit hot. What do you consider hot? Because
It's
you're in
not that.
California, so.
Yeah, it's actually, well, outside it's beautiful. It's perfect outside. It's probably like maybe high 70s, low 80s with a breeze. We're not too far from the beach, right? It's perfect out there. But I'm in a 100-year-old craftsman home with the worst like insulation ever, right? So this particular room, this is my wife and I's office, and I got giant panel windows here, got giant panel windows there, and so we call it the fishbowl because it's just like it might as well be like a terrarium, right? It's just like heat just getting absorbed right through me.
It's ironic because I lived in the opposite of that house when I was a kid. When I was about 16, my dad had retired from the military, and we decided to move to Pueblo, Colorado. And that first winter, we rented a house while we were waiting to find one that we could buy. And that house was like a sieve.
Yeah.
I mean, it breathed, and I mean, we were cold all the time. I mean, it was just crazy. So, yeah, those funny memories as a kid. So let's talk about you as an artist, because part of the reason why I wanted to get you on is, some of us have very creative kids. My son, Christian, is extremely creative. My oldest son, Devin, he's creative in the art side, the music side. And I'm like, all right, I got to get Dave on because I know you mentioned you had a son and you do this incredible art pieces. And so I'm like, all right, I need to get him on. So let's talk about being a dad with a creative mindset. How has that enabled you to approach being a father in a fun or creative, unique way that most people aren't doing?
It's interesting. I don't know if I'm all like, when it comes to like really like the really creative stuff as far as parenting goes, like being creative thinker around parenting. I don't know if I'm really like, I mean, maybe it's just ingrained, right? But like it's like I almost like am breaking him down almost more analytically sometimes than I am creatively. And then I wait for the creativity to be in the expression, right? So like he'll come into the studio with me and we'll make stuff once in a while. And I don't push it on him, I try to encourage him, try to say, hey, why don't you come out here? Or if he asks to come out there, and then we'll paint. He doesn't do it a ton, but when he does, like sometimes he'll push out some of the most, just the coolest stuff. And he's like, he takes after me. I'm like, I do a lot of abstract oriented stuff, and he takes after that. And, I've seen a lot of kids that just throw paint on a piece of paper or a canvas or whatever. And he just has a really interesting approach and eye to it that if he really expanded on it, he'd probably end up being better than me. But, but, it's what's interesting is that he's he leans into a lot of the left brain stuff way more than my wife and I. Like, I mean, he's big into math and he likes science, and not that I didn't appreciate science as a kid, but like he really, like, he loves to read. He just jumps into books all the time. And I was never that kid. Right. And he's way better at math at his age than I was, for sure. Like, he was probably way better at math now than I was, like most of my, educational career. And, so we try to embrace that a lot. Like, we really try to encourage that. But we also try to find things that kind of touch on both. So like right now, that normally he'd be in summer camp, and there's obviously no summer camp right now. So we're doing these like online one-day camps or one-day trainings or something. And so we always go like he loves Minecraft, because Minecraft is both like the creative and the engineering, right? Building things, but being creative with it, right? So he likes that. So we'll get him in like Minecraft classes that have some sort of educational aspect to them, but Minecraft, or it's what was he doing? Like exercise, physical education, or physical fitness, but relationship to Fortnite, like doing Fortnite dances, right? Stuff like that, right? Stuff that we know is going to trigger both sides, right? Learning something and doing something, getting your body moving, whatever, but also that creative aspect into things that he's into, because, obviously that's what's going to get him the most interested.
What's really interesting is as I watch my kids develop and grow, Judy and I have really always tried to take the approach of, you know what, we're going to expose you to different things, and you go, and if you're really interested in it, we'll invest in it. We'll help you. We'll help you pursue it and develop those skills. And one of the things that I see a lot of parents doing is they really try to force their kid into a mold that they had dreamed of as a kid, but weren't quite able to do. And I think that holds back your kid, instead of going, all right, where are your natural gifts? And let's explore where those go.
Exactly.
And I think that's really, really critical. In fact, last night, Judy was showing me my son Devin's Instagram, and she goes, how does he see the camera angles? Because he does these like really fun angles, and then they flow, and you feel like you're part of the scene, even though you're watching it. And so have you found that your son is naturally driven to certain things? And is that fun for you, or are there certain areas that you're like, I really wish you wouldn't try that?
Well, I think it's a little of both, right? Sometimes, right? I mean, here's the thing that one thing that, like, we were always a little bit hesitant about football. I got hurt really bad when I was a kid. Football, I hurt my back really bad, and couldn't play anymore. And not detrimental. I didn't have to have surgery, but the doctor told me I shouldn't play football anymore. And that was my sophomore year. And I like hearing, like obviously like more injuries in that sport and anything else. And I was just like, okay, so we're not necessarily going to lean into that. But one time, so like he's 5, 6 years old, we're out in the backyard, and somebody bought him those rubberized footballs, like not a Nerf, but it's not quite leather. It's just like a rubber ball. But so, or maybe it was a Nerf. I think it was a Nerf actually at the time. And we're just in the backyard. He's 5 or 6 years old. And I throw him the ball, and he drops it, right? And then he picks it up, and he throws it to me, and he throws it with such a perfect spiral that I was like, what just happened? What just happened? So I threw it back to him again, and my throw was even, because I hadn't thrown a football in a while, so my throw was all like this, and then he throws it again. It's another perfect spiral. Like, what is going on right now? No. I'm like, oh no! It's like I got a natural quarterback on my hands, and he's not a huge kid, but he's definitely in the bigger range of his buddies, and I'm a little over 5'10". And, that's too small to play anything really substantial, right? But he may he may excel or beyond that for so I don't know. So it's like I'm on this thing like but so like but then he always like we've vocalized this idea of like we're really a bit hesitant about football, and I think that kind of put a little bit of a screw in his head a little bit too. So he's on the fence with it too. So he'll figure it out. He's really like he's physically gifted in like he just takes things well. Like we've got a basketball hoop for him this year, and he can drop free throw shots all day long. He just picks up physical activity really easily and well. So I think he's a bit of a jock, even though it's not his normal inclination. Like he's got the skill, but it's not something. He's like Marshawn Lynch, right? Like not necessarily super inclined to to want to do it, but super skilled at it, right? So I don't know. He could be one of those guys, but I don't know. And then we, and then the other stuff, it's like. Yeah, lean into the math, lean into the science, lean into the stuff that he really kind of enjoys normally. Because when I was a kid, my mom always thought that I was a creative person. She always thought I should write. She always thought I should be drawing. But it wasn't like, I mean, she was mostly, for the most part, single mom, working for herself as well, always busy. And so she, just to keep food on the table, she didn't have enough time for me. She had to focus on her work. And and I don't feel neglected at all, but she couldn't spend enough time to really encourage the creative side of me, even though she knew it was in there. She knew it was always there. And so I think if going back to that from my history, like if I would if I was her, I would go in and really kind of push that. So when I look at him, it's like, okay, he likes the art, he likes doing creative stuff, but it's not necessarily his main thing, right? So definitely lean more into this stuff without pressure, without, putting too much expectation on it, just kind of like giving him the opportunity and kind of encouraging, maybe a little push, right? Because he's not sometimes he has a tendency to be reluctant, right? He's not big on new things, right? He's not a big new thing guy. He's the first one and only, like a first child, only child. And so he's not big on new things. So we kind of have to like kind of lean him into it a little bit and give him, just a wide berth, whether it's those things or, I mean, getting him to eat his vegetables.
As I was listening to you, I was thinking about my experience with my youngest daughter. I mean, she is a phenomenal athlete. I mean, she is no balls dropped. We're going to play at all expenses. I mean, we're sacrificing the body. Get out of my way. If you're not as good as me, I'm going to run you over. And so she's played volleyball since, I mean, probably 7 years old. Now she's playing D1 volleyball for UVU. This is her first year. And I remember about freshman year, her cousin, Alex, I mean, she is a phenomenal rugby player, and she's actually been invited to train with the U.S. Olympic women's team, the sevens. Oh, wow. And so they are really, I mean, they could be sisters. I mean, you look at them and they could be sisters, and it's crazy how alike they are. And so she was really pushing to change sports. And I'm like, you can't, we've been doing volleyball since you were 8, right? And honestly, if I'm truly honest with me, one, I was having so much fun with volleyball and I could see the trajectory. But I also thought of rugby as kind of, and I hate to admit this, but kind of not so much of a girl sport. And so I'm choking on my words, but I loved watching girls play it. So it's this kind of dichotomy wrestling in my head. And so I never really, and they don't really have a great rugby club here in Idaho. Mm-hmm. So there were those two things working. So I kind of downplayed it. I kind of poo-pooed it and shoved it aside. No, sweetheart, stay on the volleyball. But part of me is going, man, you miss an opportunity to at least let her go and explore it for a season. But I just knew, talking to her coaches, that if she missed a season, it would really, hinder her for college prospects, because she was on a track.
Yeah.
from very little to play college volleyball. And so, but I still sometimes wonder what would have happened if I would have let her do the rugby route, even just for a season.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know, I guess, right? Can't go back in time. I mean, but we play these things in our head, and it's just like, well, it's like, I think that's a big thing, is like making sure that we don't put too much pressure on ourselves about making these choices, right? Or
Yeah.
helping them make their choices, right? So it's I think that because that's where regret comes in, right? We start to imply this regret. We get to the end of our lives, and they're standing there, and maybe they didn't achieve the goals that we thought they were going to get, and we might think like, oh well, that might have been my fault because I didn't get the thing, right? Right? It's like trying to what do they call it? What's that? What is that? I took ethics and logic in college, and it was like this Greek or Latin phrase. It was post hoc ergo propter hoc is what it was. And what it means is like, this happens because of that, right? And it's this logic we play in our head, like, like, oh, well, the moon was full, so that must be why I got pregnant, right? That's like, right? Those types of things, right?
So I'd like to go back, if you don't mind, and this may be a bit personal. So if we don't want to go here, but I think it's important, because I think a lot of fathers come from single parent homes, either a mother or a father, single father. And I often ask, how did that affect you as a dad? That very first time you hold your little boy, did it really play in your mind, hey, can I be a great dad? And what can I do to truly be there? Do you mind sharing that at all?
Yeah, actually, I don't have a problem sharing that at all. Okay, just for context, I don't speak to my father anymore. We did have a off and on relationship for most of my young life and even my adult life. But him and I do not see eye to eye on a lot of things. And when my wife was pregnant and my son was born, I made a pledge to myself that I was going to be way better at it. I just knew that I just said, I will do everything I can to be better at this job than he was for me, because he wasn't around most of the time. He had pretty narcissistic personality, and like only wanted to care when you were like almost like in honoring him in some way, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
nice enough guy as long as you were cool, and then as soon as you're not cool, he's not that nice. And I just didn't want, and I mean, my first objective was to make sure that, I got my boy to 4 years old while I was still, my wife and I are still married, right? Because that was like, my dad left at 3. It's like, okay, that's one win. I already got, and I knew it wasn't going to be a problem, but it was like, that's one of those things. I just checked that box, like saying, I'm definitely got that, right? And then having the, like making, like, there's sometimes parts, it's funny. My dad used to say this all the time. He used to say this phrase, you come by it honestly, meaning like I would make some sort of comment about how I was or what I did, and he would say, you come by it honestly, meaning you came by it because of genetics, because it's what I do too, right? Like he was acknowledging that when I would say things that I would mess up, it's like, yeah, that's just like him, right? And I always be like, play it off or whatever. But every once in a while, like I'll do something, I'll react a certain way, I'll treat him not the way he should be treated, and I just jump right back into the way my dad would do things. And I'm just like, geez, man, it's like it's like he's right. The whole come by it honestly thing. It's like, as much as I've tried to shake that stuff, sometimes it still kind of seeps in. But the difference is that he would never own it. He would never own it. Right. And then, I've tried to be really, really, really conscious about, if I mess up, to make sure to have a good, heartfelt conversation with him. Right. Even though sometimes he doesn't like, the attention span, like, whatever, dad. Right. Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Bye. Can I go play Fortnite? Right.
Yeah.
But like we go back and forth a lot, but I'm trying really, really hard. Number one, not fly off the handle like I used to. Really kind of temper that. Right. And then just approaching him with a lot of more consideration and pause and dialing down those conversations before they even get started, right? Because again, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be this guy here so that he learns that from me and then takes that to his kids if he ever has any, right? So that's kind of it.
Well, and that really is beautiful because I think one of the greatest blessings that I had growing up was my dad owned it. I mean, if he messed up, you knew that he felt like he messed up. I mean, he would go for a walk. And I mean, he would go for a walk. It's almost like a walkabout in Australia. He'd be gone and come back a couple hours later. And he'd always come into the bedroom, even if I'd fallen asleep, and he would wake me up and say, "Hey, son, I just want to let you know that I'm sorry. I was not the best version of myself. I overreacted, and I just wanted to let you know that I'll do better as a dad."
Hmm.
And I think from that experience, I learned not only was he honestly trying as a father, but I recognized that he was trying to be the best dad that he could, and he really did not like it when he tripped up. I mean, it really disappointed himself. And I think the thing most important about that is how it made me feel.
Mhm.
And so while your son at 8 or 9 or whatever, because I was that same age, he may be just, I'm tired or I want to go play Fortnite or play Minecraft. He's going to remember how that made him feel.
Mhm.
And that will ripple into every aspect of his life. And I think that's an important legacy that we as dads can do, is like own our stuff and apologize and love even harder after we've messed up.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And as he gets older, and I don't know when the switch flips of when, I mean, maybe as he gets to a teenager, he pays attention even less, right? Tunes me out even more. Or
Yes.
like there's a period like at what age does it flip where he's like really conscious of what the conversations we're having, and conscious of not just that conversation, but also recognizing that, we've been having those conversations since he was young. So I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see.
In my experience, it was about 14
Yeah.
ish. And then all of a sudden, dad was an idiot. Dad was, insane. He didn't have any idea what he was doing. He's old fashioned, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
then they went off to college, and then they came back and they're like, "Wow, Dad, you weren't so dumb after all."
Right.
Oh, but no, it's pretty fun. Now about it just depends. 18, 19, they started going, "Yeah, you know what, Dad? Let me help you with the siblings," which has been nice, because my oldest son is 26 and my two youngest are 18, and our kids just, they really are tight. I mean, my oldest son Devin comes home and he sits at the piano and all the kids gather around, they sing songs together. We play games, late into the evening. And if you ever watch us play games, in fact, I should record it. Everything is a competition in our house to the extreme. In fact, the game Spoons. The
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
the last time we played Spoons, we ended up taking my second son to the ER because him and my brother-in-law were fighting over the spoon, and he ripped it out of his hand and just totally sliced the inside of his hand.
Oh
And the
my gosh.
doctor's like, "You cut it how?"
Right.
I'm
You
like,
got cut by
"What?"
a spoon.
He's
Right.
like, "You don't understand my family. It's all in, right?" So, um, so as a dad, now your son's 10.
Hmm.
What has surprised you most about being a dad?
Good question. that as much as I may have thought like I was going to teach him all these lessons, that I think he's taught me more lessons than I've taught him, you know, and then more lessons on how to be a good human, how to be a good dad, how, you know, just like what it's like to look at somebody and think like observe what's, you know, somebody of the younger age is thinking, right? Like how to not assume that he knows as much or he can do as much because he doesn't have the experience, and stop putting that idea of like, why can't you just do this thing that everybody should be able to do if you were a grown man, but you're not a grown man, right? That kind of thing. Right? Yeah, I think it's that he's taught me more lessons than I may have taught him so far.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because what I found is I got married, and boy, my wife knocked off a lot of rough edges. She's like, all right, we're taking the butcher knife off you and we're hacking off that habit. We're hacking this off.
Yeah.
And the kids are really like, you know, whittling down the edges and making me a polished shaft. And
Yeah.
sometimes that evolution, that change that needs to happen to your personality and your character, it's not easy because, you know, it's like your kids will really push your buttons, and you react. Sometimes you're like, did I just do that? Oh man,
Yeah.
dude, that was not what I should be doing. One, as your father, but also as a man. And I need to do better. And I often tell my kids, I'm like, look, I am not the perfect dad. Straight up, I am not the perfect dad. I mess up. You see it all the time, but I will always tell you I'm sorry, and I will always love you. And I may not be perfect, but I will love you perfectly.
Mm.
And so I just try really hard to live by that. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna mess up, and we're not gonna. And it's fun, you know, watching your kids kind of now starting to go build their own lives and see how they're starting to fly. So, and you still got years ahead of you. So you still got the teen years ahead that are just super fun.
Yeah.
He's laughing.
Yeah.
In both good and bad ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I just think about myself as a teenager and think to myself like, oh my gosh, you know, like all the things that I would do, you know, just sneaking out of the house, sneaking girls into the house, you know, stuff like that. And it was just like, that's why we got cactus outside his window. He doesn't know that's why, but that's why. Right.
Funny.
Right. You know, just like things like that, right? It's like total fire hazard, right? He's like fire in the house and he's got to crawl out between the cactus. Yeah. But for real, you know, it's like just thinking about that, like, you know, the way I was with the parents. And I think, you know, who knows how much of the way I was had to do with the fact that my dad wasn't around. My dad wasn't that kind of figure. There were men in my mom's life, right? She got remarried there, and there were other men there at times. Nothing that made like a severe impact. In fact, if there was anything, it was like me at arm's length with every single one of them. Probably to, you know, partially her detriment, which I've reconciled with her a couple, you know, since, but, you know, it's like, how much of the way I was acting, and I didn't get involved in anything crazy. I didn't get involved in drugs, and I wasn't doing anything crazy. I didn't even start drinking alcohol till literally my 21st birthday. That was the first time I went and actively drank anything. And so never involved in anything crazy like that. But like any other behavior, like what was that? Was it because of all those things, or was it just teen angst, like listening to punk rock and heavy metal music as loud as I can and scaring the bejesus out of my our housekeeper at the time, like, oh my gosh, it's like devil music.
Yeah, I remember the first album I bought and brought home, and I put it on the little record player, and turned it on, and Back in Black came screaming out. My mom's like, "What kind of devil music are you listening to?"
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's fun. So man, we could keep going. Your story about the cactus just reminds you of a story when I was a kid. You know, as kids do. You sneak out, you go hang with your friends, and one night I came home and I'm sneaking back into the window, and we had this split level house, and so I'm sneaking in on the front where my bedroom is. And for some reason, I'm trying to get the screen back on, but I can't. It just keeps like scraping against the brick. And instead of just letting it go, I'm like trying to get it going. And all of a sudden, the lights go on in the bedroom. And so I'm a sleepwalker. So I immediately throw my arms straight out in the air and pretend to walk like pretend like I'm sleepwalking. And I try to walk by my dad, and my dad says, "I know you're not asleep. Go to bed. We'll talk about it in the morning." And so, so I didn't sleep very well the rest of the night. And I walked down in the morning to get, to the breakfast table. My dad's sitting there, and he goes, "Sit down, son. Where are you? Where were you?" And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "How did you know that I was sleepwalking?" He goes, "I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to let you figure it out." And I love that he did that, right? I mean, he didn't lose his cool. He knew I'd been out, and he's like, "Look, I'm going to make you own it. I'm going to make you reflect on what you did and really kind of grow through that experience." And that's always been one of those fun experiences for me. Yeah, I got busted, but my dad really made me think about how I was acting and what I was doing, and more importantly, how I responded to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He really wanted me to think about how I responded to being caught.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good lesson for dads. So, kind of in wrap up and closing, what are one or two key things that you think are important for dads to do or to become with their kids?
Oh, I mean, I think it would come down to really the two main things for me would be patience and empathy, right? Um, you know, one practice that we've had with him, because he had his period there where he would get really like aggressive and for a little bit, and like he would get really upset, and then he would get himself so wound up that it would just be like this, this snowball effect of his emotions. And so just like tell him, like, listen, relax, right? Breathe through your nose, out through your mouth, right? Just do that. Just stop thinking about everything. Just breathe in and breathe out and think about that stuff, or don't think about it, just breathe, right? And then you just can't help but dial down. It's just like me having the patience and presence of mind to pause myself to get him to that point, so that we're not just both going back and forth at each other the whole time, right? So it's like having that patience to think about that. That's one. And then empathy is something that I've really, like, it's a word that I didn't really know. I didn't really consider much until probably in my 40s, right? We're really starting to think about how other people of all, anybody, whether it's my wife, whether it's my kid, whether it's my family, whether it's, people on the street, my friends, like, what is happening with them that's possibly contributing to what they're doing or how they're acting or how they're feeling, right? And so, having empathy for him and his situation, like, it's difficult because, the age gap, and like, I just don't know what goes through his mind sometimes, but, just like sitting there thinking about that stuff and really kind of like, okay, just take a break, consider where we're at, consider where he's at, and then figure that out. I think those are really the two main things, right? And also, not just that, but also expressing that vocally or showing it visibly, to him in other circumstances, right? Like, somebody does something irrational or we might consider dumb, on the street, in the supermarket or whatever, or like having that conversation about, well, we don't know what that person's circumstances are. We don't know what's going on. They may have had something really traumatic happen to them just before they came to the supermarket. And so that's why they're upset. That guy on the street who is obviously homeless, potentially, possibly drug addict, that it's always down their neighborhood. Yeah, it steer clear, but understand that you don't know his circumstance. You don't know what got him there, right? It could be really traumatic. He may have other things going on that we just don't know. So you just have to, don't just judge, right? Really think about what's going on there. Be safe, be secure,
Yeah.
but also don't judge too harshly because you don't know what's going on, right? So
I love that. That is really good advice. So
thank you.
I want to thank you for joining me. I mean, this has been a phenomenal discussion. I could easily keep going for hours and hours. I love talking about people's kids and their experience as a father. And that's really the purpose of the podcast, is to help men see other men who are trying to be good dads, because we're all not perfect, but we're trying. So I would invite you guys to go out. If you're on TikTok, check him out. It's Dave Makes Things.
Mm-hmm.
And his website is daveconrey.com. And that's Conrey. And I mean, he does some amazing hats and mugs and spray cans even. I mean, he's always doing really cool art pieces. So I invite you to go check him out. And Dave, thank you so much for joining me. It really was a great discussion. So
yeah, no, I had a good time, Jody. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks. And the rest of you guys, thank you for tuning in every week. We will catch you guys same time, same bat channel, just next week right here on Father's Fire. Have a great day. See ya.